They panic. They get them out as soon as possible. They're like, oh my gosh, we don't have the resources for this. And then they start writing this was at CNN, self-congratulatory, see how welcoming and great we are. And wow, what an amazing impact they had on us for the one day we let them live on our island. Libs, their kryptonite, I'm telling you, is mockery, everybody. Hypocrisy, yes, that's a constant with them. But mockery of their lunacy is critical. Friday, big story, of course, was the Martha's Vineyard migrant situation. And they're already gone. They were moved, dare I say, deported from the island and moved to Cape Cod by the military. Now, somehow that's fine, but offering them a free flight to an idyllic, relatively crime-free paradise of Martha's Vineyard, where the average home costs over $1 million, that was human smuggling, human trafficking. And Libs, they were in a panic. You could tell because of how stupid their criticisms of this were. Governor Ron DeSantis making a lot of headway here and pointing out that this gets them mobilized much more in this Biden White House than the 5 million illegals who have flooded the country while Biden was president.
When I heard that the president is scrambling to get his cabinet together to try to address the fact that you have governors who are helping to relocate illegal aliens to sanctuary cities. Now, he didn't scramble to get his cabinet together when we had millions of people illegally pouring across the southern border. He didn't scramble to get his cabinet together when you had 53 migrants die in some trailer in Texas because they were neglected by the federal government. You didn't see him scramble to get his cabinet together when we had Americans that were victimized by criminal aliens that he led across the border. You didn't see him scramble to get his cabinet together when we hit record fentanyl deaths, which that fentanyl is coming across his open border. It's only when you have 50 illegal aliens end up in a very wealthy, rich sanctuary enclave that he decides to scramble on this.
I mean, it is a very interesting comparison. I think a very important one that about 50 people die of asphyxiation, illegal migrants in a truck because of the massive smuggling operations going on. Media talked about that for a few hours, then moved on to something else. 50 migrants, perfectly safe, healthy, fine, everything's fine, just given a free flight to Martha's Vineyard. And all of a sudden, the Libs realize their hypocrisy is being exposed, although they don't really care about hypocrisy. I always tell everybody this. And there's a national emergency. The mayor of D.C., I mean, just so everyone understands, the mayor of New York, the mayor of D.C., the mayor of Chicago have all complained about the illegal migrants coming into their cities as a result of the buses or flights paid for by other states. Here is D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser.
We're not a border town. We don't have an infrastructure to handle this type of a level of immigration to our city. But we'll create a new normal here in our infrastructure and have a humane welcome for people and an efficient, service provision. But we don't have the ability. We're not Texas.
Okay, Clay, first of all, this idea that border towns have the ability. This is not about processing migrants when they first enter the country illegally. That's a Border Patrol issue and an ICE issue. This is where do they go to live inside the United States? Along the border, a lot of them stay there for a period of time or stay close to the border. There's no special reason. McAllen, Texas doesn't have some special plan in place. El Paso, Texas doesn't have some special plan in place to deal with the flood of migrants.
Her analysis would make sense if suddenly a team of Haitians was arriving on the Potomac River to enter into the United States for the first time, right? That would be analogous because suddenly you have to process all of these illegal immigrants and associated aspects with that. It's not what's going on at all. What is going on is it takes a pinprick of the people illegally crossing the border. And as we are speaking to you today, there will be 8,000 people who will enter in illegally on average right now every single day between now and when the election takes place in 50 days. Probably will taper off some in the winter, as typically happens as the weather changes. And then it typically kicks up again in the spring, running into the summer all over again. And as you pointed out, Buck, and we've said on this show for some time, over 5 million illegals, we believe, have entered into the country since Joe Biden became president, including over 2 million in the last year along the border. These numbers are out of control. And the only way that the border gets talked about in any way is if there are illegal immigrants being shipped to Washington, D.C., New York City, Chicago, and now Martha's Vineyard. And I believe what should happen is they should put these illegal immigrants on airplanes and fly them into the wokest enclaves in the United States, the bluest, the most left-wing, and let people understand what is occurring in Texas and Arizona. And what I would say to you, Buck, speaking of the election, Carrie Lake is surging. And I don't know if you saw this poll that came out on, she's now got, I believe it was a 4-point lead in the state of Arizona.
Blake Masters is right on the edge with Mark Kelly.
Right there with Mark Kelly. And obviously, we believe Greg Abbott's going to win comfortably. I think Dallas Morning News had him up 8 or 9 points in Texas over Beto. Still need people to vote and all those things. But there's a lot of those border race elections in Texas and in Arizona, Buck, that I think are going to get decided to a large degree because of our failures at the border. I think Blake Masters has a great chance. Carrie Lake's going to win. Abbott's going to win. The Myra Flores contingent down along the border, I think, has a very good chance to win as well, just based on border security.
And it's amazing to see the way that this completely upended. I mean, this threw the Lib apparatus, the Democrat Biden regime, into a panic. And it's really just because people see what's going on. You're not supposed to know about the illegal flows into these communities. And so when it becomes visible, when it is because there are millions of illegals in places like in the total places like New York and Los Angeles and Chicago. I mean, there are literally millions of illegal aliens already living in those places. But when there is an awareness of the daily influx of more and more and more, and by the way, those numbers are over decades. The Biden administration's done 5 million in 2 years. It is the public awareness of what's happening that is the political risk for Democrats. That's why they're freaking out about this. And also the fact that turns out when you have an area that the Democrats are used to being not so diverse, very wealthy, and a place that they go to get away from crime. Libs go to get away from this. Nantucket, the Hamptons, the Vineyard, Malibu, California, the Delaware Shore, by the way, for D.C. The Maryland and Delaware Shore is full of the D.C. elites. By the way, to your point, I think those places, Delaware is supposed to be next, but it needs to be not just not dropping them off in Wilmington. There should be busloads of illegal migrants dropped off in the fancy beach town where Biden has his home. I mean, there should be people.
Rehoboth Beach, I think, right, is where his place is.
They should have people dropped there, so there's an awareness of this. But I thought this was funny, too, Clay, that the CNN headline, I'm sure you saw this. I'm reading the headline. They enriched us. Migrants' 44-hour visit leaves indelible mark on Martha's Vineyard. They panic. They get them out as soon as possible. They're like, oh, my gosh, we don't have the resources for this. And then they start writing this was at CNN, self-congratulatory, see how welcoming and great we are. And wow, what an amazing impact they had on us for the one day we let them live on our island. Libs, their kryptonite, I'm telling you, is mockery, everybody. Hypocrisy, yes, that's a constant with them. But mockery of their lunacy is critical.
They hate when their intelligence is questioned. And let me just hit you with this, why the Martha's Vineyard, I think, crystallized for so many people out there. Left-wingers have been taking a free ride on virtue-signaling woke policies without having to cash any checks predicated on what they are endorsing. And let me explain what I mean by that. Defund the police. overwhelmingly the province of woke white people who do not have to live in communities that are besieged typically by crime. Open borders. Oh, you love the idea of illegal immigrants and open borders and people being able to go wherever they want until the consequences of open borders come to where you are. Think about shutting down schools, remote work. All of these policies that have been advocated by woke white people are a disaster for average people in America. Most people aren't fortunate enough to be able to shift from going to an office to working from home and not have their productivity impacted. Most people do not have the luxury of being able to put their kids in private school and hire expensive tutors while lecturing all of us about the importance of shutting down schools to keep kids safe. Same thing when it comes to border security. Same thing when it comes to crime. Democrats are overwhelmingly the party of woke white people right now. Woke white people drive almost every policy that Democrats are putting into place. That's who I believe should be overwhelmingly being attacked right now by Republicans. The least liked people in America today are the woke white people who lecture you on what jokes you can make, where your kids can go to school, whether your kids have to wear masks, and they do it while looking down their nose at you, claiming that they are loaded with virtue. And to me, what Ron DeSantis did on the Martha's Vineyard trip was puncture that woke cocoon that surrounds all these super wealthy people who claim that they're better than all.
I really want everyone to understand this. These migrants, the 50 migrants in Martha's Vineyard, and the stuff the Libs were saying last week is, oh, this is human trafficking. Gavin Newsom, we should talk about this. He's saying he's straight up running for president if Biden doesn't run.
And we need to play the audio of Biden suddenly saying, hey, maybe I'm not going to run.
So we'll come back into that. Gavin Newsom, dude, he is just endless ambition and shamelessness. So, trust me, if he can get Elaine to run for president, he will absolutely do it. But he's trying to pick a fight with Governor Ron DeSantis over this, saying there should be an investigation into kidnapping. These migrants were already let free into the United States. They were already processed. They were given a free ride to Martha's Vineyard. People are saying that they were induced to go there under false pretenses. Give me a break. What are the false pretenses? Going to give you a free flight to Martha's Vineyard? Give me a break. But also this notion that, and this goes to what the D.C. mayor says, we don't have the resources for this. What do they mean? There's plenty. They couldn't figure out 50 beds and hot meals for 50 individuals for a few days on Martha's Vineyard. It seems very obvious to people watching this. No, there's something else at work here. They don't want their idyllic island to be a place that has to deal with the social services costs and also just the changing of their little society on the vineyard that would occur if not just one migrant flight, but a lot of migrant flights showed up there.